What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Tech Backstage. My name is Eddie Hudson, joined with my co-host Tulio Siragusa and our guest for today, Dan Van Orden from Idea Room. Dan, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Tulio, how you doing?
Good, very good. It's good to be here.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, let's dive in. Dan, what's up?
Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun, man. Yeah, for sure. So, Dan, welcome to the show. I noticed you're from Eagle, Idaho. I'm from Spokane, Washington. I forgot to mention that fun fact when we were talking.
Not that far away. That's great. Yeah, I've driven to Spokane from here for several reasons.
Yeah, for sure. It's I have a lot of family from like Boise and then the Lewiston, Clarkston area. So you're totally up in my my old stomping grounds for sure.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, dude. So tell me a little bit, I guess first and foremost, tell me a little bit about yourself. How you came to be VP of sales at Idea Room, but, a little bit more about your journey as well.
Sure, yeah. So I started out as a programmer. I got a management information systems degree from University of Alaska Anchorage, which is a little exotic, I suppose. Alaska is a wonderful place. And I actually got on board with a startup company, one of the only ones based out of Alaska at the time during the original .com boom. And then when they cratered, I went into consulting for 12 years. And after the end of my tenure in consulting, it was just serendipity. I was in Boise, having started an office here for that company. Russ Whitney had been with a number of startups in the Boise area. I was looking for a startup company. And we kind of found each other through an investor group. And I joined up with him because he had the ability to raise money, and then he brought like the product background, and I brought the consulting background. And it was a journey. Like, we just had our 10-year anniversary. But I transitioned to sales when we were told by our board, as we went through 4 to 5 years of becoming profitable, the founders are the best people to sell. And so both Russ and I learned it. He went on, of course, he's running the company, and he's the president and CEO. I transitioned to sales because I learned I loved it. For me, it was an extension both of technology, which I did in consulting and we were doing at Idea Room, but helping folks be successful with that technology. And so for me, a sales conversation is a consulting and education conversation. And there's also the thrill of closing a sale, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, of course.
So that was kind of my journey there.
Yeah, and I mean, sales, like, I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? Sales is really about I guess good sales and good marketing is always about finding people that will benefit from your product instead of trying to talk people into using your product just to make another sale, right? So I think that's huge. How did being an engineer and a VP of engineering first, how did that set you up for success in sales? Because I think that's a really important. I'm in the same boat, right? Like, I'm an engineer by trade, but it helps me be a better salesman too. So how do you think that led to success for you?
Well, I know the product very deeply. I probably know the history of it even better than a lot of the people that work on it now and some of our customer success folks. But where that helps me in the sales conversation is, explaining it at kind of a deeper level. There's also, in sales, often you need a pre-sales engineer with something as technical as Idea Room. I don't necessarily need that because I have all of that kind of engineering and technical context. And we are getting to where a lot more of our customers are doing integrations. They have enterprise systems that we need to integrate with, or there's sort of an end-to-end software stack, and Idea Room's in the middle of that, but there's more. So in those contexts, it's very helpful. I think just the product knowledge, like the more you know about your product and the more you know about the market and your customers, kind of the easier it is to tie the pieces together as you talk with your potential customers.
How do you tie something as technical as Idea Room into enterprise level applications?
Well, if we're talking about integration, so Idea Room really sits in the marketing through sales part of the business. So as a customer becomes aware of the business and they want that product and they're looking for who am I going to buy it from, there's this customer journey that quickly ends up in Idea Room, because in our case, we're selling buildings, and the design and the visuals of that building are very important. But once Idearum's done with what we do, and either the customers sold it themselves and they bought it online, or they worked with the salesperson, at that point it goes into some form of order fulfillment. And we go everywhere from kind of like, hammers and nails putting together a shed into large construction projects that require a construction crew, and there's engineering involved, there's a complicated bill of materials. And so we may end up integrated with an ERP like a NetSuite or an Acumatica. And we're also frequently integrated with sort of, again, that end of the sales process where it becomes a sales order, and then that goes further into fulfillment and manufacturing. So for some of our bigger customers, that's kind of where it ties into an ERP system or just some larger system.
So it's not just a design tool. It's like it sounds like you can actually create, like you said, almost like a list of materials and a lot of other things just from this one, application.
Yeah, there's a lot kind of both before Idearoom that then is behind the scenes but ties in with Idearoom, and then past. And so it's a lot more than design. We used to just drop into that 3D environment, which is kind of a wow factor, and it's a great way to introduce people to Idearoom. But really, we can help our customers know how to market to their customers better and tie into things like Google Analytics, or do a social share that might get you a little bit of viral exposure on a really cool building design. And then, we don't yet do materials lists, so we're kind of starting to go down that route. But ultimately, we will end up, whatever comes from Idearoom, which is kind of the spec sheet, goes into some other system that finishes the engineering process and kind of the final details. It's pretty broadly impactful. It's a lot more than just a 3D view, though that's pretty awesome itself.
So just curious, because it sounds like it's a visual way to plan designing basically anything, right, in construction, but then it ties in the ability to plan out the parts or the basically the inventory and product that you're going to need. Who's the user? Who's the targeted user? Is it the general contractor, the architect, the end customer, all of the above? Just curious who the user is and how do they do it now? Like, how is this a contrast to how it's done today?
The answer is all of the above. However, the real primary focus set of users are the end customer, the person that's purchasing the building. We're really trying to give them the best possible purchasing experience. And so we want to enable them to do something that could only be done in the past by an engineer or an architect, and design their structure. However, the salesperson is also an important part of that process, because inevitably at some point, especially if you're talking kind of structural steel buildings, the salesperson picks up the conversation and helps them get to the end of the purchasing process. So it's kind of like visual CPQ, and CPQ systems have traditionally been a salesperson tool, but we're trying to push as much of that to the consumer. And the whole reason for that is just to eliminate friction in the buy experience in the sales process, where and the way I talk about this to salespeople, because they get worried that we're like eliminating their job, I say, no, ultimately the technology is in service of humans. We're trying to eliminate the friction that the customer feels when all they want to do is like make quick changes, see what the price is going to be, and have an easy way to engage with you, but not have to bug you and get like multiple day turnaround for tiny little revisions. So it's really the consumer, the customer, and the salesperson are the primary target users.
Cool. Okay, so I guess I have so many questions I want to ask you right now, because this applies to so many things, like in so many ideas that I've thought about in the world. And one of the things, at least from my perspective, so let's go back to the pandemic, right? Like, a couple years ago now, still just kind of like fresh in everybody's mind. I was house shopping, right? And nobody actually wanted to go out and do anything. And, because it's a pandemic, middle of a pandemic. And, me and my buddy were talking about doing a prop tech app, and we were like, man, wouldn't it be so cool if you could just go to some like warehouse somewhere and like put on a set of like goggles and like tour a house virtually. And like, I'm looking at Idearoom going like, look, you could actually build your dream home in Idearoom, put on the goggles, and then tour it, right? But backing up a little bit, I think you said something really interesting when we were talking earlier, but how Idea Room actually helped your customers during the pandemic. And I think just like what you were saying right now about how it's not taking sales jobs away, it's actually enabling sales, right? Tell me a little bit about that experience during the pandemic and how your product was helping your customers and small businesses.
Yeah, the pandemic was very interesting. We actually, for the first week or two, we had customers reaching out to us asking to defer their subscription payments. And, everybody was like trying to figure out what's going to happen next everywhere in the marketplace. We actually saw traffic to Idea Room about a week or two in skyrocket by 8 times. And that was just a quick precursor to the whole industry being inundated with orders. And some of these guys were sold out for like 6 months to a year into the future at some points because they just didn't know. I mean, it's a unique event. But what really became clear during the pandemic is it accelerated this. You need to be able to sell to people at home and over the internet just as effectively or more effectively than in person. And we really enabled both, but we did see some of our customers who signed up at that time or had previously done it, survive and thrive through that period. And I even talked with some companies where specifically some salespeople relied on their own methods, and some of them used things like Idea Room, and those guys were more successful. So it was pretty fortunate for us that we were kind of there to help these small and medium-sized businesses kind of survive through that period. And it was a fortunate set of industries to be in because it just drove so much demand for their products. And we couldn't have anticipated the pandemic or that, but it was very nice to kind of be there and go through that experience. And then, Eddie, you kind of mentioned something that I think is related to the future of Idea Room and the past, which is as it relates to housing. We're doing some of that now because some of our customers are like doing tiny homes and accessory dwelling units. And we have some that are kind of doing what we call barn dominiums, building a house out of like a post frame or red iron building. Earlier on at Idea Room, before we had the kind of current software, we actually did a project for a home builder that was like a 3D floor plan configurator. They had a lot of them that were 2D. We did it for 3D, and you could drop into the home and move around. At the time, augmented reality and virtual reality weren't really big yet. But we've added augmented reality now, so you can use your phone to like place a building on your property and see. I'm really interested, this is very recent, but I'm really interested to see the impact it has on what people buy. Because we really have seen this change what people buy, either buying more, it looks better, or they're able to kind of match it aesthetically to what they really want or need. And yeah, I ultimately see us adding the fully furnished interiors for things like the barn dominiums. But at some point, modular homes, I think that approach is really going to take off as somebody really figures out the construction technology. And we're just in the perfect economic environment coming out of the pandemic where just the price pressure, the difficulty in getting labor, I think it's going to drive innovation there. And yeah, I totally think that some combination of augmented reality and virtual reality, and I have VR goggles that I use all the time. I'm blown away by kind of the physical feeling you get of presence there. I think that'll eventually, combined with stuff that Idea Room does, kind of lead to a completely different kind of buying experience for, buying a home.
Yeah,
you get there.
Yeah. Tulia, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just curious about how are you going about validating, to get adoption? Do you have a set user group that you go and validate ideas with? Like, how are you fine-tuning this in such a way that people easily adopt it, right? Because we all know if something's challenging, people revert back to the way they used to do things, right? So I'm curious what formula you guys have discovered or that's working for you. I'd love to hear how you guys are going about that.
Yeah, so I think part of it is the focus on the customer experience. And I even want to do some more of our marketing that targets the buyer of a building rather than always just targeting our customers, the companies that build these. Because if that purchasing experience is that good, then customers kind of demand it.
Hmm.
And that was always our approach from the beginning, is like, salespeople are a user, but the first thing we think about is, can we make it simple, easy, and delightful enough for the end customer? And then what typically happens is, we land in an area, and this happened in sheds, and everyone around there that were competitors quickly kind of had to adopt something like it because it was so impactful to their customers' experience. So kind of that consumer focus, I think, has been important. And we have that ingredient branding on Idea Room. So once it's out there and it's public, people see it, which drives a lot of attention. And then as we go into an industry, a lot of it is we try to identify and go after really good customers for us that are focused on marketing and selling a great customer, service and experience. And then we kind of learn with them. So during that early phase, there's always a little bit more friction as you kind of get to critical mass adoption. And if we're working with really good customers that help us move it forward, I think that's been a pretty critical part of the success, I think.
So where ultimately is your plan to take this? You want to be able to have planning, design, procurement. What else? What's the end goal, in your opinion, based on what you're getting back from the users as feedback?
Yeah, there's a couple of possibilities there, but the way people pay, because these are higher priced items, whether it's a shed and it could cost, I don't know, $5,000 to $20,000 or $30,000, or it's a larger steel building you're putting a barn in the backyard that could be 80 to 120,000. It's a big purchase. So part of what affects their design, their thinking, is, how do I pay for this? And that could be financing, it could be rent to own, and these days all different types of financing are proliferating. That's always been a high friction part of the purchase process, is both like, how much purchasing power do I have? And when I go to pay, even if I've done a financing contract, how do I avoid this being shuffling paperwork around? Even a PDF with a digital signature process, if there's multiple steps, there can be a little bit of friction. Just identifying all those pieces, right, and making sure that it's as frictionless as possible. And in our case, you can actually buy a shed or a carport, like start to finish, checking out online to put your deposit down. But kind of that end right there, the payment, I think there's a lot of room there to make it more frictionless for customers. And I'm just thinking about, in my own case, when I'm online purchasing, if I can use the native payment availability on my phone, it's radically better. And I've stopped and not purchased something because I couldn't just do Apple Pay or Amazon Pay or whatever's available. I had to type in a credit card. I was like, no, I'm done with that. And when you get into financing, it's just a little bit more complicated. So we've been working with a lot of partners during that checkout phase to make sure that they can kind of seamlessly integrate into filling out the financing contract, making a payment. So that's one part of the process that I think is going to get more and more refined. And then ultimately for us, I think we're going to stay in buildings. We've kind of peeled out these industries one by one. I think housing is the next one. We're kind of still breaking into critical mass and red iron and post frame, but ultimately tackling modular housing, I think, is the future. And I just think it's going to, go after a critical need in society in general. It's kind of the logical evolution of what we've been doing. And there's just a lot of kind of exciting developments that can happen there.
I have an interesting question. Tulio, did you have another one?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Because I grew up in a modular home. I grew up in a double wide modular home, and out in the country, it's very common where we're from, right up in the Pacific Northwest. Because you just buy a plot of land and you stick a modular home on it. Yeah. But like when I grew up, that was really more like that middle class housing, right? But as we move into the future of housing, there's this potential for modular homes to no longer just be like cookie cutter modular homes, right? Where you could actually go in, use a tool like Idea Room, and say, hey, I actually want to build my own custom modular home based on these pre-built components. I remember when I was a teenager, we used to do precast concrete like outbuildings that they'd use in national parks. And so you could go in and you could select from a catalog, and then they just send it down the assembly line. And so there's this real possibility for being able to use a tool like Idea Room, to pre-build a custom modular home. And it doesn't have to be I lived in a rectangle, right? But it doesn't have to be a rectangle. It could be a custom home just built on modules, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I lived in one as well for a while as a kid in Alaska. And yeah, I think what we're talking about now is with the advance in sort of modular construction. And we've been working with enough of these guys. I see so many people attacking it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
They're still figuring out what model's going to work. But I think you could have most of kind of those stick-built homes in suburban neighborhoods be some form of modular home that is nicer because it can be put together faster, more easily with less labor. And yeah, easier to roll out from a marketing and selling perspective because you'll have 3D technology where people can both select their options, but yeah, drop in there and really like feel the space. So they'll really be confident they know the home, because part of the thing here is like being able to sell it without ever having built that particular configuration. But then, yeah, giving the customer enough of a good impression of what is that going to feel like, especially if you're going to live in it. What does it feel like? So I know I'm going to be happy with it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting future for housing.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that presence thing that you were talking about in augmented reality, right? Like, because I have my Quest 2s over here too, and like I can put them on. I can play 18 holes of golf right here in my office. But the thing that blew me away, just like you said, is as soon as I put them on, the sense of actually being present in an alternative world, like not like in my office. And it's mind blowing. It actually changes the way that you think about things, because it's like you almost feel like there's another dimension just in this room right here. And so being able to sit down and visualize something that doesn't even exist yet, that hasn't even been built, I think that's super powerful for the future of housing and for the future of modular housing for sure.
Yeah, I started with a PlayStation 2, which was really kind of low fidelity in the graphics.
Yeah.
But the moment I put that on, and if you're doing something where you're near an edge, and all of a sudden your body physically reacts like I could fall.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, oh wow, this is interesting and it has a future. And the Quest 2, which we have one, is just that much more advanced and interesting. As that fidelity gets higher and higher, I think there's going to be tons of commercial applications that are going to be pretty important. So
yeah, especially if you can get to what do they call it, tactile sensations and things like that, so you could actually go up and you could like touch your granite countertop and like you would feel the sensation in your like tactile gloves, or the ability to maybe put like the new home aroma in the room that you're touring your virtual home, and it has that sensation, right? And I think that would be it. That's the thing, is like it's not just sight, and being able to use all the sensations to actually be able to, and all your senses to be able to like feel like you're there. I think it's going to be so powerful when we actually achieve some of that stuff.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we're thinking ahead to some things like that. I mean, we built on a toolkit. It's 3JS. That actually made it easier to get into augmented reality.
Yeah.
But VR is almost there. AR seemed to like beat it in terms of just utility. Like that was the thing our customers were most asking for. And once we did it, it was pretty wild. Like I went to a conference and I was just showing folks with my phone out on the grass, like walking around the building. I was also pretty surprised. I was like, man, this is going to affect people's decisions. This is interesting.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I think from there, one of the things too, like you were talking about, so going back to the payment system, right? You were talking about making payments frictionless. Yeah. So, and I think this ties into something you said earlier about how like you don't have building lists, like material lists yet, right? But think about like, how do you think the experience will be for people where they can go in and start designing their home, right? And it's almost like an AR e-commerce, like a 3D e-commerce, right? So they're looking at their kitchen and they have the ability to swap out a countertop or put in, cabinets up here, and then they could actually see, reflected in real time what the cabinets from that provider would actually cost to the underlying bill. And so now you're talking about a full service design all the way to final mile and checkout to actually be able to design your, your home or your shed or, you said the, some of the other forms of alternative housing, and actually being able to design that right there in idea room, be like, yeah, this is what I want, and check out.
Yeah, we've had folks approach us, and what they want is idea room to design a shed, and then it spits out plans and materials so they could build it themselves. I could see that, and I could also see, yeah, in the case of like a home, certainly buying your cabinet kit. Earlier on, we actually did work with a closet manufacturer that had everything automated. So we did like the 3D rendering piece. They did a 2D configurator piece. And I knew in the background from a manufacturing perspective, like it automated manufacturing, it dropped it in the boxes, it put the labels on top. That's definitely, a potential target market for us, I think, is folks that could design and then build their own. And even some of our customers now, what they do is they ship you a kit. There's the folk that do soup to nuts, everything, including installation, but there's also kits. Studio Shed is one of those where they send you a kit and you can put it up. And yeah, I think there could even be a marketplace, which I guess this plays into the metaverse concept as well. So you could design something, have all of the parts and pieces shipped to you, and either yourself or an expert could install them. But ultimately, like even having real products you can have in the real world represented in the 3D space for the metaverse, where if you want to build out a really nice home in the metaverse, maybe something that's being paid to those folks are designs that are so nice. People want to have them just for the beauty of the 3D space. So yeah, we might have some interesting new business models as we keep moving forward.
Yeah, I can see people trying to build ADUs in California, and I think in the Northwest is one of the two areas where they're very popular now. That would be awesome. Like you could just design your little dwelling in the backyard and order all the pieces if you're a little handy. It'd be kind of interesting to see where that's going.
Yeah, I think California has improved their regulation in a way that is supposed to be making that easier. And I actually have a friend who builds accessory dwelling units as a product. And, I hope California is a place that takes off. We have, I think, like 5 or 6 customers that are doing ADUs. It's not a perfect fit because we're not yet doing the interiors, but some of them make some really beautiful products. And yeah, if you can make it really easy to order and pay and just drop it in your backyard. I still don't have one, but it would be fun to go out there and work.
It's definitely an interest. It's definitely interesting what happens when you digitize things that normally would take a lot of manual effort and planning and designing. So you're facilitating things to get faster and more efficient. Just curious about, as we come to wrap up, curious about the kind of culture and environment that you're creating that inspires people to want to participate in putting this kind of technology out there.
Oh, well, that's a good lead in, Tulio, because we're actually hiring a lot of people right now because we're kind of hitting a new growth phase. One of the big things that's most important to Idea Room is the culture of the company and the quality of people that we have here. I mean, most companies want to create a great culture and have a lot of great people, but genuinely, I mean, I've been at some really good companies and enjoyed it. Idea Room is the best place that I've ever worked, and to a large extent, I think it's about it kind of is about inspiring people to do their best work. And I think it helps that like the product we have does seem to really very substantively help our customers. And so like producing real value in the world. And even from a selling perspective, that you're looking for customers that are a good long-term fit. You're not trying to convince them or push them into buying. You're really consulting to find out, does this work and does this fit for you? Right. And I think across everywhere from sales, we're very customer success oriented. It's the biggest department in the company. We focus on the business results. So we focus on, are they really seeing the business value in terms of, increasing their sales revenue, their customers having a better experience and coming back to them through word of mouth, those kind of things. And I think that comes into the culture of the company, that it's very both employee but also customer oriented, the customers that we have and also the customers they serve. And if your people are empowered to do the right thing for them and they see they're producing real value, that's pretty exciting. I mean, it's why I'm still here, has been kind of the learning, the growth, and helping people. And I think a lot of the people that we hire and are most successful here, that's kind of their focus.
Nice.
I don't know, did that speak well enough to culture, I guess, Tulio?
No, that's great. Look, we have a mixed audience, right? People who are interested in learning about new and exciting technology, and we also have people who might be interested in coming to work for you guys. So it's always good to give the audience what they're looking for.
Well, it goes back to, like, for me, technology always has to be in the service of something human. It can be very easy to think that, like, technology is just efficiency, and whatever, in some cases eliminating jobs. But ultimately what it does for me is it takes out friction. It allows you to focus on the things that are meaningful and matter. And for, like, our customers and their customers, it's like, what matters to you for your business? What matters to you for buying this building? And for your employees, it's kind of the same thing. Like, nobody likes working on some rough area of the technology of the business that you're doing things that don't make sense. Right. Technology, I think, removes that friction, and it really helps you focus on what matters. That's my cat. Olive.
Nice. That's like my cat, always wants to be asleep right here. And yeah.
On the keyboard sometimes.
Yeah, like right here, right in front of the computer, all the time. Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Any closing thoughts, Dan, before we close the show out?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. This is really, like, I've been here for 10 years building this business, and we're hitting an exciting phase, but we are going into kind of a big growth phase in buildings that will likely ultimately lead to housing. We're going to be hiring a lot of people, and I finally hit, like, an inflection point after 10 years of just seeing the kind of disruption that's actually happened. It happens incrementally, so maybe along the way sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but I think big things are coming, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but we're trying to really kind of disrupt construction and buildings in a significant and positive way. So it's exciting, and yeah, if people are interested, we are hiring, and it's cool tech, so I'm always willing to have conversations like this, and yeah, it's fun to do, so I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Very Sweet. Cool. Yeah, and it's great to have you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Tech Backstage. Thanks, y'all.
Take care, everyone.